Oh my god. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just really just like endorphins are racing through my body right now. I love this movie. Can I just say that right now? That's the bottom line. I love this movie. Anyway, this is the Blockbuster Beach Bum analyzing the films you may or may not have seen on the big screen, and welcome to part 3 of my X-Men retrospective. Now, I just saw a 10 p.m. screening of X-Men, and I don't know when this video is going to get up, probably sometime really early Friday morning. But I can't sleep. I probably can't sleep because of just everything that just happened in this movie. Oh my god. But let me just talk about the problems first so I can calm myself down a little bit. Being the third chat, I'll talk about the plot and then I'll talk about the problems. Story goes like this. You have the X-Men are in a future where the mutant hunting robots, the Sentinels, can adapt to anything, and now they need to go to the past and, change events so that way the future isn't this screwed up. So, that's the plot. Now, problems that I had with the movie are few. Number one, I wanted this movie to be longer. I think that's more of a compliment than anything else, but I really hope that there'd be like a director's cut of this movie where it's like 2 hours and 40 minutes. This movie's like 2 hours and 10 minutes, but I was always engaged. I would be curious to see some change, because there's some things that I feel like they edited out, and they did take out some stuff with like certain characters, but that didn't bother me all that much, except in the beginning. It felt a little jarring in the beginning. That was one of my problems. Just like the first maybe half hour, 20 minutes, it kind of feels like, wait, what? Oh, that's okay. But not enough to totally take you out of the movie or anything, just small things. Now let me talk about what I love about this movie. This movie is directed by Bryan Singer, who directed not only The Usual Suspects and Valkyrie, but also the first 2 X-Men films and Superman Returns. But the first 2 X-Men films are very solid superhero films. X2 is one of my favorite superhero movies of all time, and I just think it's a great movie. Now, what Bryan Singer does here is that not only does he make a great sequel to First Class, but he makes a nice throwback to the original films. In the beginning of the movie, you feel like they kind of exit the future stuff early, so it's like, oh man, I don't get to see as much of Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart and all those old X-Men, like Shawn Ashmore as Iceman or Ellen Page as, Kate Pryde and stuff, or like some of the newer mutants like Bishop and Blink and all that. But they do come back at the end of the movie, even though their characters don't get as much development, which is unfortunate, but at least their powers are cool on screen. So, like, this movie feels like I said, it's like a throwback to the older X-Men films, except in the fact that this feels more like an X-Men comic book than any of the other X-Men films. The colors are more saturated and like deeper, more colors instead of more of a gritty tone that the first 2 had, or like a grittier looking tone is what I mean. Even though this movie does have some pretty gruesome things that happen, which I'll get to that later. But that's what I like about this movie. I felt like I was watching an X-Men comic or an X-Men like cartoon, but put to live action. And the effects in this movie are amazing, especially the stuff whenever Magneto is manipulating things. Gorgeous. When Quicksilver is running, gorgeous. All the visual effects are awesome in this film. So visually, it's really impressive, and the future and the past have very distinctive looks. Now, the other thing that I really love about this movie are the performances. Of course, Hugh Jackman returns as Wolverine, and of course, he's good. Of course, Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart are great. You have returning cast members of the X-Men films like Halle Berry as Storm, Ellen Page as Shadowcat, Shawn Ashmore as Iceman, all that stuff. But, you have a continuation of Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy as Magneto and Professor X, respectively. They are amazing. You have Professor X, in this, movie, he's kind of done with him with trying to save the world. He's not like the Professor X we knew in the other movies, where he's like the wise like teacher who he instills like good has like good ideas. He's like Martin Luther King. This guy's like a beaten out, overdosed hippie who really doesn't want to have anything to do with anything anymore. He's very, in a way, selfish, but because of things that have happened to him, you can't blame him that much. And then you have Michael Fassbender's Magneto, who is still obviously wants to dominate over humanity in this movie. But in this time, he's trapped, and they break him out, but he ultimately causes havoc. But their banters together and arguments on screen are perfect, and I can't wait to see them in future X-Men installments. Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique is definitely an improvement over First Class. Her character has more purpose in this movie, especially since Mystique is pretty much really the central point to everything in this movie, because of her valuable DNA. She's really good, and it's Jennifer Lawrence, I really don't see her too often as like cold and calculating in certain scenes, and more like a deadly assassin, which is not the type of description I would put together with Jennifer Lawrence, and she definitely fits that mold better in this movie than she did in First Class. But First Class is a different movie. It's trying to set up Mystique, and it kind of leads into this movie, especially since this is basically a sequel to First Class. Of course, I think the actor's name is Evan Peters, who plays Quicksilver. He was great. Everybody had like such a problem with his costume and everything. I'm just so done with fans. They're just like, we live in a world where like, oh, the Batman ears are too short. Oh, they will never get life right. Boo-hoo. Or like, oh no, Quicksilver looks stupid. Honestly, this Quicksilver really was one of the best parts of the movie. He didn't overstay his welcome. I almost wish we had like one or two more scenes with him, but he was great, honestly. I thought he was fantastic. Just really added a sense of, a lighter tone to the movie, especially when it get in the very, very, very beginning, like prologue, and towards the end, it gets really gruesome. That's one thing I'll say about this movie. This is not for kids. Now, I remember I was looking at the movie times for like the Thursday night screenings, and I was looking at it and I'm like, there's no 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. screenings. There's only like 10 p.m. and, later. It didn't bother me so much, but I'm like, okay, whatever. And I figured out why. This movie is gruesome on a lot of levels. There are casualties that happen you just can't believe happen. And certain like acts of cruelty and like pain that happen that are like, oh my god. I mean, not to the extent where this movie's going to be rated R, but I'm like looking at this and I'm like, I can imagine that Bryan Singer had to cut stuff out to make this PG-13 on a certain level. And that's why I like that the X-Men films are not controlled by Marvel. I know I'm going to sound like Satan when I say that, but that's my opinion. They're able to do more mature stuff with these movies, and honestly, to me, that's more satisfying than anything else. And I just like the fact that X-Men is kind of separate from the MCU movies. My only problem is I wish we would get to see Wolverine fight the Hulk, but that's a minor caveat at the end of the day. This movie blew my socks off. Even though I wasn't wearing socks, I was wearing my Sperry shoes. But if I had socks I was wearing in the movie, it would have blown my socks off. Compared to the other superhero movies I watched this year, Amazing Spider-Man 2 sucked on a lot of levels. And Captain America 2 was awesome. That's a great movie. But to me, this is my favorite movie of the year. I'm probably going to try to see it again this weekend, hopefully. Might be the only X-Men film that I see more than once in the theater. Like, for some reason, I only get to see, like, each of the X-Men films once in the theater, and I intend to break that tradition with Days of Future Past, because this movie... Whoa. It was amazing. If you love First Class, you will love this movie. I can guarantee you that. See you guys later. I forgot to say this in the video. Stay for the credits. Stay for the credits. Please, it's really good stuff. Yes, I forgot something else. Peter Dinklage was great. He's a really good villain in the movie. I know I forgot a lot in this review, but yeah, it was just... I'll maybe have a more coherent review in the future. I just wanted to lay down my first impressions.